what I'm mostly going to talk today about is the conservation of the Bélizaire painting that I'd imagine a lot of you are familiar with. I'm not going to really get into the history of the painting or the attribution of the painting, mostly just on the condition of the painting when I received it for treatment and the what I ended up doing with the painting. And so can you see the images pretty well? Or? Okay. So, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about these images here, and then I'm going to move into some other treatments that I've done that are similar in similar problems to the Bélizaire painting, to kind of prime the pump, so to speak, so you have an idea what to expect when when we're looking at Bélizaire. So I've got this little pointer, so hopefully that won't cast too much of a shadow. This painting, this image over here, was the image of the painting prior to it being restored in 2005. So is my understanding. That is not how I received the painting. So that when it was treated in 2005, Bélizaire was painted out of the portrait, in this area over here. In 2005, they uncovered him. And what was not clear, it's still not clear to me and to the folks at the Met that now own the painting, is when was the painting damaged? So when Bélizaire was revealed and they took that overpaint off the background, there was some damage to Bélizaire. Now, we don't know if the damage was caused during the cleaning or whether it was caused prior to him being painted out. Maybe the painting was rubbed down in some way to get rid of the paint texture prior to painting out. So there was some damage there. And so when it was painted, after that cleaning in 2005, this is what the painting looked like. Okay? And obviously Bélizaire is visible, but Bélizaire was heavily repainted because of some damage that was underneath, either underneath that overpaint or it was caused during the cleaning. We're not sure. So I'm going to go now and talk about some other treatments that were repainted, like this one, and kind of explain the process of cleaning a painting, and then we'll go back into Bélizaire. So this is some paintings in a church in Charleston, South Carolina, the St. Mary's of the Annunciation, one of the oldest Catholic churches on the East Coast. And these paintings were all but the center, except for Christ, were painted by an Italian painter in the 1830s. And then they were installed in the church at a later date. So what I'm going to go through is this painting here of the Nativity and talk about the treatment of that painting. You can see get an idea for the size. Working on scaffolding big projects like this are a lot of fun, in my opinion. So here it is. And I don't know if you can see it in this photo, but it's kind of crudely painted. The image is kind of crudely painted. And there's a lot of brighter colors than would have been used in that period. And so here you can see the details of the two areas I'm going to talk most about. You can see the face is very bulbous and opaque in quality. You think of a 19th century paint layer, it's become somewhat transparent as the paint layer has become transparent as it's aged, and so you get a sense of translucency in the paint, and a lot of that is missing in this opaque application of overpaint. And you can see it in the Christ child too. Just this heavily opaque paint layer. So you can go to the next one. So what we, of course, we're going to do is take all of that overpaint off. And how we do that in conservation is we determine the solubility of the paint layer on the surface and the solubility of the paint layer below. And so what we're trying to do is determine how we can dissolve one layer off the other without causing damage. And so that's, lots of different solvents, lots of different approaches with gel, mediums, and things like that. And so what you see is here is you see this face under here? Can you see that? Yeah. So we're taking this layer off of this layer, okay? You can see how the face is moved, that when they repainted it, they adjust the pose, and you'll see in the later photos the paint quality is totally different. Here you can see this area has been cleaned, really working through this overpaint in that area. And so it's a slow, tedious process done under magnification with we were using organic solvents, so it was a little cotton swab, dissolving the paint and taking it off. Maho Yoshikawa here, another conservator that I work with, did a lot of the work on this particular painting and the cleaning of it. There is some damage, and that's, there was damage throughout these paintings, and that's probably why they were repainted. What they tried to do, it looks like, is clean the paintings. They partially cleaned them of grime. You can imagine in a Catholic church, there's a lot of soot from candles and incense, and 100 years of that builds up on a paint surface, and instead of really getting into the cleaning of that grime layer, they just repainted it. And there are some areas where it looks like they did try to clean it a little bit, and there was some damage that was caused. But for the most part, they're in pretty good condition, really. But can't you see how, now there's this transparency in the shadows, in here and in these areas that we didn't have before. And it's really important to have that, because the artist is trying to impart something to the viewer, and he uses these techniques to impart emotion in the piece. And when the restorer comes and repaints them, all that is lost, and you start to lose, that magic that the artist can produce. So you can go to the next. So these are the after treatments, and you can see more of that. What we do is, after a painting is cleaned, we will varnish it generally with a stable synthetic varnish, because we don't want our varnishes to yellow and discolor with time. And we want our varnishes to be easily removable so that they can take them off in the future without worrying about damaging the original paint layer. So we will put that on the painting first, and then we'll go in with other stable synthetic paints that also do not discolor as they age and do not change in solubility as they age, so they're easy to remove in the future. And go in with a little brush and just in-paint just where the damage is. So it's kind of like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. If you had a couple missing pieces and you had to make the pieces, it's kind of what it's like. So that's how you can pull a painting that seems badly damaged back together, because you're matching. You've got one little area of damage. You just match the color that's surrounding that damage, and you just put it in there. And all of a sudden, the painting will start to come back, And so that's what we've done here. And you can do the next one. So here you can see the before and after. which is a huge difference. You know, but you know, you'd think that this would be uncommon, but it's really not uncommon. And it wasn't uncommon that it happened to Bélizaire either. I mean, it's pretty common. So, yeah, you can really tell, you know, the highlights on the lips and the big nose and everything is so, you know, it's not soft and subtle and show a little finesse, you know, it doesn't have any finesse as a technique or anything. Plus, there's a lot of changes that were made. You know, you can see the yellow here, it's red here, there's a yellow sash here, it's red there. These are much smaller here, so, you know, very different painting. So, unfortunately, it's common. So, I guess the next one, there you can see, this is the before cleaning and in painting, and this is after, and you can start to really see all the changes. You know, the green foliage there is not here because it wasn't original. We actually found remnants of a signature down here that had been painted over. You know, his clothing is completely different. And yeah, so I guess the next one. Okay, this is another portrait. Well, portrait that I wanted to talk about for a little bit. This painting was painted by William Halsey, who painted it. He was an Alabama portrait painter in the 1830s. And unfortunately, this painting was restored probably in the 1950s, I'm guessing. It's been glued to masonite, which is pretty common for tears. It had some tears in it. And we decided to leave it on the masonite. Sometimes we have to take it off the masonite if it's separating, but it's very time consuming to take off a masonite because you usually have to grind the masonite down to the back of the canvas, or take it down with a scalpel. And so it's just time consuming. It's not that it can't be done, it's just it gets expensive too. So and it's a risk to the painting. So we usually leave it if it's not already separating. So in this case, it was very well adhered, so we decided to leave it. But here you can see this orange here, and all this dark area throughout here is all overpaint. So his chin and down in here, and there's other areas throughout the background and jacket. So it has the overpaint, plus it has a grime layer on the surface, and discolored varnish. So here you can see, you know, you can really see the overpaint in here, you know. And overpaint, you know, repaint, if it's done in an oil paint medium, like this one was and the other one, oil paint darkens as it ages. And so it may have matched when they put that on, but it no longer matches, right? Because it's darkened. It also becomes harder to remove as it ages. But so you can see in the cleaning, you know, revealing all of these little tears and paint loss and scratches and everything, and that's why it was repainted. And so after it was cleaned, then we varnished it like with the stable synthetic varnish. And then we filled all those losses with a fill material, careful not to cover any original paint. And then we go in and just texture those fills so they kind of match the texture of the surrounding paint. We use little dental tools and texture them. And so once that's done, then we go in and we in-paint the damage with, like I said, with a little brush and stable synthetic paints. And what this shows, this is a ultraviolet light photo, UV light photo, and paint different kinds of paints, different ages of paints will fluoresce differently under UV light. And so this shows where we added paint. This is sort of after we've in-painted out the damage. So you can see how specific we are to damage. So we're not repainting, we're not adding paint over the original paint layer. We're just keeping it within the confines of the loss. So that's what you can see here. And I wanted to show you that, how it's done. And that's how we're able to pull something back together, really. So you can do the next one. So here it is after in-painting, and it pretty much, everything pretty much disappears, and you can see how it's not really rocket science or anything. It's just tedious work, and being good at matching colors, and so you can see the before and after. Yeah, and look at you can see how the chin line changed and everything, and it's very hard for a curator to give an attribution to a painting when it looks like that too, so it helps in attribution of paintings that aren't signed, and a lot of paintings from this period of painters from the early American painters from 18th, 19th century, a lot of them did not sign their paintings. So it does help with attribution, for sure. Okay, so now back to Bélizaire. I guess you can, so I just want to reiterate, so that was prior to 2005, and this is how it came into my studio. So you can go to the next one. So I wanted to show you the back of the painting and what was done during that treatment. This is a typical 19th century stretcher with these keys, they're called keys in the corners. They're little wedges that allow the canvas to be expanded. If it if it sags on the stretcher, when the humidity goes up, it gets kind of loose, and someone might want to key it out a little bit to expand the stretcher so you put tension back on the canvas. Not always the best thing to do, but that's what they're there for. And so this painting has been keyed out just a little bit, like maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. And that's probably the original stretcher with butt-end joints, a kind of a tongue and groove, actually. And so the original canvas, when it was restored in 2005, was attached to two components. It was attached to mylar, which is a polyester film that's transparent. So it was attached to mylar so you could see through it. A lot of times that has been done in the past if there's writing on the back and they wanted to secure a tear or something, and so they will attach it to mylar because it's transparent. You can see the writing. But this was lined because of this tear right here, which is located in this area right here. And in between the mylar and the original canvas is an interleaf of fabric, a very thin fabric. So that's sort of what you're seeing here. There's a little separation between that fabric and the original canvas. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of that. We did not get into reversing that, so we just left it as it is, because it's pretty stable and seems to be holding the tear in plane and that sort of thing. So wanted you to see the other children and see how their faces, like in the church, they have these subtle shifts in tones in the faces, and in the darks there's a transparency to that gives it some life and color. And I want you to see these because these children are all really in pretty good condition, other than some discolored varnish and grime layer on the surface, but they're in pretty good condition. So you can go to the next one. So these are some details of Bélizaire's face, and you can see how the quality of his face is very different than the quality of the other children. It's very flat, and the eyebrows are very stylized, and the eyes are very stylized to a degree, and you can see how this area just is flat. You know, on the other children it was rounded, and because of this shading with the glazes and that sort of thing, that it's just very flat. So I wanted you to see that. If you look in here, these little dark, can you see these little dark areas, little dark spots? That's a residue of grime and varnish that was not completely removed in the past when it was cleaned. And you can see it's kind of, this whole area is kind of a residue of discolored varnish and grime. And so you can really see it over here. So that was also something that we got into cleaning. So you can go to the next one. You can see more of that residue in here. You know, there's a lot of this, and some of that residue is the overpaint that was used to paint him out of the painting. It wasn't completely removed, and so there's, you know, a fair amount of that as well. You can see this area is very discolored because it's been repainted and it's darkened over time too. So, okay, you can go to the next one. And these are these UV photographs again. And what these show, these are before I got into cleaning. So this shows all of the paint that was added in 2005. Is this clear? Is that clear? Okay. So this was all the paint that was added in 2005. And you can see how most of his head is completely repainted. Except for this little bit up here, a little bit in the nose, around the eyes, a little bit there. But for the most part, it's overpainted. And then there's a lot of overpaint in the background as well. And you can see the same in the jacket. You know, this big, large area that looked discolored in the last photo is showing up in UV as overpaint as well. So the goal, you know, is to get all that off and get back to the original paint layer and see what the original artist was intending Bélizaire to really look like. You know, you remember the artist is in the room with the sitter, and he has some insights into what this person is like, and he's trying to convey that in the painting. And when it's overpainted, you lose all that. You lose all that personal interpretation, and so you get lost as to who this person was. So I think, you know, in removing this repaint, I think we found a little more of who Bélizaire was, which was exciting. And just some other photos that show this repaint. This is Bélizaire's hair, and then this is discolored over, you know, repaint that extends into the background. You can see it here. One way, you know, there's a lot of ways one can determine whether something is repaint or original paint. And one of those ways is you can see the cracks here, and then the cracks just disappear because the paint layer was added over the cracks. And, you know, it obviously, the paint layer cracked, you know, prior to this application. So that's one way of determining it. So, you know, when a painting is repainted, you wonder, why was it repainted? Was it repainted just because they didn't like the way he looked, or was there a tear, or was there a lot of paint loss, like in that portrait? And so, you know, it's kind of, well, why was he repainted? And one thing that you can determine, it's as you see all these light spots here, under, you know, here and here. Is that visible from up there? Out there? here. That's abrasion or solvent abrasion. So when it was cleaned or rubbed down in the past, the tops of the varnish, the tops of the canvas, your canvas weave has a texture, so the tops of that texture often get abraded. And when you think of a painting and the layers of a painting, you've got the oil paint on top of what's called a ground layer, and that's a priming layer that's put down on the canvas prior to the application of the paint. And so that is oftentimes white or beige. So when it gets over cleaned, you end up with these white dots showing that ground layer below. And so that's what you're seeing here. All these little spots are the ground layer. And here you have these cracks, that disappear into the paint layer. So we knew it was abraded, underneath. You can see it here. You can see this discolored repaint covering these areas of abrasion. And then this is residue from the paint layer that was used to paint him out. So you can see it here too, all this abrasion. So it was, it's just peeking through the added paint layer, the repaint layer. So it's visible. You can see a lot of it, in here, all up in there, and you can also see cotton fibers from cleaning. So I just wanted to briefly touch on the cracks too. There's a lot of cracks in the paint layer. The binder and the paint particles, that ratio is heavy on the binder. It can shrink as it dries. And so that's what's happened here, is that the paint layer shrank as it dried. Probably the artist added extra medium or something to his paint to extend it, make it more transparent, so it shrank as it dried. Whereas a lot of these cracks have more to do with just the expansion and contraction of the canvas over time, and so they're more structural stress cracks. I also wanted you to see that when it was treated prior to 2005, they did bleed a lot of color kind of into the cracks, and you can see that in some of these larger cracks. So when it was cleaned, all those cracks become much more visible, So now getting into the cleaning, on the left, you can see this is half cleaned. So this is the overpaint side, and you can see all the damage that is underneath that overpaint. And obviously there's a fair amount. But now you can see his paint, the softness of his features and the expression on his face and that sort of thing, compared to before. And his face is more three-dimensional. You can see here how this is now much more three-dimensional than on that side. And the eyebrows are no longer, this kind of stylized eyebrow. And also going in and getting rid of all of that residue of varnish, that you see over here. It's not there. And then all of the residue from the paint that was had him painted out. You can see the same here, the removal of the overpaint that was covering his jacket, all the abrasion that was in this area and in other parts of the jacket, makes that jacket look more three-dimensional now. And it's, I'll be honest, it's you hope when you're cleaning something like that there's a paint layer underneath it, because it was repainted. It was repainted for a reason, and you're not 100% sure that that something is underneath it, and especially with this painting, it was a little nerve-wracking, to say the least. But it really turned out well, and I was happy to have cleaned it off. But you can see this is a typical swab we're using to dissolve discolored varnish, and you can see here on the left side the varnish has not been removed, and on this side it has. And that varnish is a natural resin varnish like Damar or mastic. A lot of artists still use that today, but it does yellow with time and become less soluble with time. So it's not always the best choice. If there's artists in here, artists beware, these things will happen to your paintings. But maybe go back real quick. So you can see, one thing you can see too is that a varnish that's yellowed flattens the painting out, because an artist is using cool colors to recede and warm colors to come forward. And so when you have a yellow varnish or a gray grime layer on the surface, it negates all of that. So the artist's intention is no longer visible. And that really, you can see that here where this really recedes more now, and the whole painting was like that, when it was cleaned, all of a sudden you could see into it much, much better. So the next one now. This is the tear in the hand that you saw in the reverse. I wanted to show you this is the UV of it prior to cleaning, and you can see how that overpaint really covers much more than just the tear. I wanted you to see that real quick. But so here it is after cleaning, and you can see all these. After cleaning and filling, we've filled the losses, so you can see all the little white areas of where there were losses, and we've filled those. You can see the cracks are pretty pronounced in his jacket, and you can see all of the abrasion in Bélizaire from when he was either scrubbed down and painted out, or when he was overcleaned, during the process of removing that overpaint that painted him out. So, and you can start to see how it really recedes. So here you can see, how the inpainting is done. This is a little tiny brush under magnification, so it can be pretty tedious and time-consuming, and it's not good to do under a deadline. I'll tell you that. But so you can go to the next one. So there you can see him after inpainting and varnishing and everything. And so now he has like a different expression, that's more reflective of what the artist was trying to capture when he painted. And you can see how much more three-dimensional it all looks as well. And here you can see in the UV, it's kind of a blurry photo, but you can see all the little dots in here. Like here. And all of the orangish color is the original paint layer. Same with here, all these little dots are where it was abraded. And there it is after. One thing that was real, all of the drying cracks that I showed you from the paint shrinking, most of those are in here. And we went in and inpainted each one of those cracks carefully, and it's just like, all of a sudden the painting just receded into the background, because that crack pattern was, somewhat beige in color, and it just made it so you couldn't see into the painting. And it was amazing. I mean, it's like we inpainted those cracks, and all of a sudden you could see that boat showed up, You didn't notice it so much before. And that's fairly, I've seen that in other paintings of who this artist may be, but so you can see the before and after. You can see the jacket looks very different, and his face is more expressive, and it's lighter, and it recedes more. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming.